Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
It was good to see you at the Preds game Saturday night.
You as well?
I mean, I'll tell you, that was very, very exciting. I have to be honest with everybody, though. I kind of, was looking at the standings and everything else because the Predators play at Pittsburgh tonight in their final game of the regular season. And I saw, the Predators have 80 games played. And they will be, or 81 games played. And they'll be done today. Like, that'll be it. And it's like, Edmonton still has 3 games to play. Like, I think it's just ridiculous. Like, how did they schedule it this way so that the Predators play tonight and then they may not play until Monday or Tuesday of next week? I mean, that doesn't make any freaking sense whatsoever to me. But, again, nothing you can do about it. So, again, the Predators taking on Pittsburgh in the season finale tonight. We do have a pair of tickets to give away, and I haven't decided how we're going to do this. So I will decide at some point, and then I'll let you know. Sorry about it. I do want to start on this, though. There are some people, everybody's got an opinion, right? I've got an opinion, Ian's got an opinion, you've got an opinion, we all have opinions. And in the cases of certain NFL teams, they have their own opinion makers, right? Their GM, their coach, their director of college scouting, their assistant GMs, their offensive coordinator, their defensive coordinator. Everybody's got an opinion. And ultimately, in almost every organization, there's one person whose opinion matters the most. Titans tried it last year where one person's opinion didn't matter the most, and they drafted a guard. But there are some opinions that mean more to me than others. Mark Dominic was a very successful general manager when it came to the NFL draft. Now, Dominic, when he was in Tampa Bay, did not win a ton of games. But as far as drafting, Gerald McCoy, Levante David, etc., solid general manager. And I would like to say that when it comes to opinions that I trust, Mark Dominic is right up there towards the top of the list. And Mark Dominic was on SiriusXM NFL Radio on Friday, and he was talking about he was asked what the Titans should do with the 7th pick. Now, I mean, everybody's talking that they should go offensive line right with the 7th pick. And we've kind of said, okay, if it's not offensive line, then it's going to be Neighbors, Harrison. Are they going to trade back Olu Fashanu, maybe go for the right tackle? But we've kind of ruled out tight end Brock Bowers as far as this program is concerned. And Mark Dominic had a different opinion on Friday on SiriusXM NFL Radio.
If Brock is there, I think that's too easy of a pick. If not, it feels like it's an offensive tackle. Could they take another pass rusher type of guy? Sure. But my gut instinct is that they want to make sure they secure the offensive line. They did what you said, right? You get a pass-catching running back on Tony Pollard. You got Tyjae Spears, who obviously can catch the ball well in the backfield. Those two will hopefully complement each other and work really well. But then they also said, hey, look, we're going to solidify our wide receiver room with Treylon Burks, but Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. We've got 3 guys, 3 horses, so we don't have to take a wide receiver, in the first round. We feel really good. So it goes back down to me. It's the 3 choices. It's if the tight end's there, I think it's a Stockton to Malone. I think it's a slam dunk. But if the tight end's not there, I think it's offensive tackle. And then if it's not, if for whatever reason they like only one of them and that player's off the board, I think that they might be the first team to take the defensive, take Dallas Turner.
A Stockton to Malone slam dunk for Brock Bowers with the 7th pick. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of you out there that are, no, Jared. And again, we've kind of hopped off the Bowers discussion, but you all know I love Mark Dominic. And we talk about this time of the year and guys banging the table for players, standing on the table, guys saying, I believe in this player. And when you listen to Mark Dominic talk about Brock Bowers, he believes in the player.
There's good tight ends, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I like Sanders. He was a little underwhelming in terms of how he worked out, but I like the player on tape and what he can do catching the ball. I'm not worried about the blocking part. But Bowers is like kind of an elite by himself. Hard to walk away from that guy. So, again, as we've talked about off the air and the way I feel on the air, at these mock drafts that are showing Bowers at 15 and 16, I just have a hard time believing that's even remotely possible based off of the tape that I've seen and some of the conversations I've had.
Okay, he's telling you When you see Bowers at 15, 16, that's not happening. And Dominic's pretty plugged in. And Dominic still watches tape. And I know, I have all the respect in the world for Mark Dominic. So when he says it, when he stands on the table for Brock Bowers and he says it's too easy, if Bowers is there, they're going to pick him. They're not even going to think twice. They're going to pick him. I say, okay, let's reopen the case. Let's put Brock Bowers in the mix. Because Mark Dominic is sold on him. And not only sold on him, but sold on him to you. So I decided to make a pros and cons list when it comes to Brock Bowers. Here are the pros. Number one, he's an elite touchdown scorer. And as Brian Callahan made sure everybody knew in his second interview as Titans head coach when he came on this program, he values elite touchdown scorers over non-touchdown scorers. Thus, Bowers, unlike Joe Alt, scores touchdowns. Number two, he's insanely versatile for an offense that is probably going to value versatility. And the Titans don't really have a slot receiver. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Also, you know I'm not sold on the tight ends the Titans have. Everybody tells me Chig's good. I mean, I watched Chig elevate to tight end 1 last year and forget how to catch the football. So I have a hard time saying, oh, no, can't draft him because of Chig. Number 3, Bowers is one of what I consider 8 elite players in this draft. We can call them the Elite 8. Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Dallas Turner, and Brock Bowers. The 8 elite prospects in this draft. The 8 where there is not a massive red flag that says, you know, this guy might not be a good NFL player because of this. And you've got an elite pick. If there are 8 elite players in this draft and you're picking 7th, well, that's the positive of sucking so bad last year. A good tight end is a young quarterback's best friend, and the 2 best tight ends in the NFL, Kelsey and Kittle, both ended up in the Super Bowl. Both are on perennial contenders. So those are the pros when it comes to Brock Bowers. Now the cons. Brock Bowers is kind of small for a tight end at 6'3", 243, and he's probably not going to be a good blocker. You know, Gronk, 6'6", 265, and again, when we're talking about Brock Bowers here, we're talking about he's got to be better than a good tight end. He's got to be better than a great tight end. A great tight end in the NFL is Mark Andrews in Baltimore. It's TJ Hawkinson in Minnesota. You know, maybe Sam Laporta with the Lions ends up in another class. Right now, I'd say Laporta's in that. Kittle and Kelsey, they're not. I don't put them in the tight ends group. Just like I don't put Shannon Sharp and Gronk in the tight ends group. They were more than a tight end. But Gronk was 6'6", 265. Kelsey's 6'5", Kittle's 6'4", and those guys are each 250, and Bowers is smaller than all of them. Bowers didn't run a 40. Didn't run a 40 at the Combine, didn't run a 40 at Pro Day. Ian, that's a big deal on this program that you don't run the 40.
Yes, it is.
And not only that, I'd love to know how fast he is. He reportedly was 4.5 in high school. You know, that is receiver speed, but is he still that after 3 years at Georgia? He was injured last year. That's another con. We don't like injuries. And while Bowers plays kind of a different position, you know, that Swiss Army knife position where you put him in the slot, you put him out wide, you put him in the backfield, you put him on the line, you do all kinds of different things with him. You move him around and kind of create advantages with the matchups. He still is a tight end, and tight end is not a premium position. Whereas left tackle, Joe Alt, plays a premium position. Edge rusher, Dallas Turner, plays a premium position, and wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, plays a premium position. So when I hear a guy like Mark Dominic bang the table, and he says Brock Bowers is an elite player, he says Brock Bowers is not lasting till the 15th or 16th pick in the draft, and that for the Titans, it would be a slam dunk, a Stockton to Malone slam dunk to draft Brock Bowers at 7. I say, okay, let's put up the pros and the cons. And I think ultimately the pro, for me, is that would give the Titans 5 legitimate pass catchers for Will Levis. You know, guys that I don't have huge fears about one way or another, right? Bowers, Ridley, Hopkins, Pollard, Spears. 5. How many guys go out into the pattern, on a given play. How many eligible receivers are you allowed to have on any given play? 5. So that's kind of the pro. The con? He doesn't play left tackle. Like that's the con right there. So what do we make of it? 615-737-1025 is the phone number. My gut tells me I wouldn't do it. You know, if it's Alt or Turner or Neighbors or Bowers, my gut tells me I wouldn't do it. But when a guy that I have as much respect for as I have with Mark Dominic is so solidly sure about someone as he is on Brock Bowers, it makes me think that we as a group need to reopen the discussion. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. And on the Brock Bowers front, could the Titans, some of their words, some of the things they've said, could the Titans actually be pretty interested in Brock Bowers and we not know it? We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on the program. We're starting there. We're reopening the discussion. Is Brock Bowers in play at 7 here on Stillman and Company? Let's talk about Window Nation. April is here, and it's hot outside. And so if your windows do not open and they do not close correctly, you're going to have some problems when it is hot outside. The sun hits the windows and everything else. You want to make sure your windows are up to snuff, and Window Nation can do that for you. If your windows won't open for fresh air or seal tight to keep out pollen and bugs, then talk to Window Nation today. Because right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. And there is no limit on how much you can save. Plus, you can save even more with no interest or payments for 24 months. So again, you buy 2 windows, you get 2 windows free. No payments, no interest for 24 months. Do not miss out now. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com to schedule your free in-home estimate. That's 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Here at Radio Row, quick one here with Brock Bowers, Georgia tight end. So you just made waves in Nashville by going on Pro Football Talk and saying you want to play for the Titans. So why exactly you want to play for the Titans?
I think it'd be cool. I've been up there a couple times to Tennessee, and I kind of would love to stay in the Southeast. So yeah.
Insightful. Brock Bowers on our show at the Super Bowl. So again, Mark Dominic, SiriusXM NFL Radio, the old Bucs GM, guy I have a lot of respect for. Mark Dominic said that he thinks it's a slam dunk that the Titans should take Brock Bowers. And again, just the way he said it was like, if the tight end's there, you don't walk away from that tight end. And I'm like, they don't have a left tackle. They also don't have a right tackle, which tells you how much Mark, a guy, again, I have a lot of respect for, tells you how much he believes in Bowers. And he knows they don't have a left tackle or a right tackle, by the way, too. Mark Dominic lives in town, but I don't know whether or not he's got a relationship with Rand Carthon or if he's got a relationship with Brian Callahan. I don't think that they've ever crossed paths working together, but again, that doesn't mean that they don't have relationships or that he doesn't have some kind of inside info or anything. But let's operate under the guise that he doesn't, because I don't think he does. I do wonder if Brian Callahan has been talking up Chigakonkwo and Josh Wiley to maybe throw people off the scent of Brock Bowers. This was last week. Asked about the tight end position, here's what Brian Callahan said.
We need tight ends. We do. We only got 3 on the roster. We'll obviously take quite a few more than that to training camp. So that's a position of need just in terms of the numbers. Feel really good about Josh Wiley and his development. Feel good about Chig, where he's at. We got 2 young players we're excited about. But obviously 3 tight ends isn't what you're going to take in the training camp. So there's going to be some spots to add, whether that comes from a veteran player after the draft, whether it comes from a draft pick at tight end, remains to be seen, but certainly need to add more than what we have currently. We'll probably take at least 5, probably 6 tight ends in a training camp. Generally speaking, that's usually where you're at. So there'll be some guys added to that room at some point.
I like Chig, I like Wiley, but we're going to add to the tight end position because we're going to go into training camp with more tight ends. And I was thinking about, okay, if you're going to add tight ends, and you guys know me, I'm not a Chig fan as far as Chig being tight end number 1. I bought the hype last year. I'm not doing it this year. I think if the Titans go into the regular season with Chig as their number 1 tight end, it is because, we tried to patch up as much as we could, but we're just going to have to suck it up with a tight end who can't catch. And it is not a great blocker. We're just going to have to suck it up and deal with it, and our second tight end can't ever stay healthy. And that's just, again, reality. I'm not trying to crap on these guys. I'm just telling you how it is. But if that's the case, why weren't the Titans in on any of the tight ends in free agency? And I'm not talking about, the Titans going out and signing a massive deal for a tight end the way they signed Calvin Ridley, because outside of Hunter Henry, who re-signed in New England, I think before free agency opened, their Dalton Schultz re-signed before free agency opened. There weren't a lot of those guys out there. But C.J. Uzomah signed a 1-year, $1.4 million contract last week with the Eagles. Now, C.J. Uzomah had 2, I think, forgettable years with the Jets. Then again, a lot of people have forgettable years with the Jets. But C.J. Uzomah was on the Cincinnati Bengals in 2021 when they went to the Super Bowl. And C.J. Uzomah was their number 1 tight end. And so if Brian Callahan is really looking to upgrade the tight end room, even if it's not at starter, he could go give C.J. Uzomah $1.4 million and say, okay, Uzomah, Chig, and Wiley are the 3 guys, and if Wiley and Chig outplay them, then they start. And if not, at least I know I can rely on C.J. Uzomah. Drew Sample was the number 2 tight end last year behind Hayden Hurst in Cincinnati. Was the number 2 tight end in Cincinnati last year. Hurst, I believe, had gone to Carolina after a good year in Cincinnati. And Drew Sample signed a 3-year, $10.5 million contract to stay with Cincinnati, but it's really a 1-year, $2.3 million contract. So why haven't the Titans been interested in tight end at all? You can't tell me that Brian Callahan is convinced he's got a true starting tight end in Chigakonkwo. Chigakonkwo hasn't done anything that would make you think that he's a true starting tight end. I think Pro Football Focus had Chig rated as the number 32 tight end in the NFL. You might say, well, 32. That's a starter, Jared. Okay. The last starter. Not the same as Brock Bowers. So I wonder if the reason why Callahan talks so glowingly about Chig and Wiley, even though saying, hey, we're going to have to add some tight ends, is maybe to throw some of the scent off on Brock Bowers so that nobody thinks they could be looking at him when it comes to that 7th pick. And you'll say, well, but Jared, that why would they throw off the scent if you're already thinking maybe they threw off the scent by not going to Joe Alt's pro day? Or, well, they can throw off the scent on multiple guys. Let's say there's 3 guys you love. Neighbors, Alt, and Bowers. Well, you don't want anybody to know that you love any of those guys because you don't want somebody to call the Giants. Darren Waller might retire. You don't want somebody to, get in the Giants' head that Tennessee might take Brock Bowers, and then they say, okay, well, we'll take Brock Bowers. Now, in that case, that would leave a Neighbors for you, or that would leave, an Alt for you. Guys, I can live with if they draft. But, again, if you like a guy, regardless of how well you like him, you don't want anybody to know you like him at all. And so that's where I sit on the Bowers front, where I do wonder if, I do wonder if Brian Callahan sees a role for Brock Bowers on this football team and sees a possibility for him at 7 the way that, again, Mark Dominic says, Stockton to Malone slam dunk. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Michael is going to kick us off here today on the program. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, Jared. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I agree with you. I'm probably a lot of other people. I think if Joe Alt is there at 7, no questions asked, take Joe Alt, be done with it. But if someone were to jump up to 5 and take Alt, or the Chargers end up taking Alt for some reason, if Joe Alt is gone in any way, I think the possibility of trading down with someone like Minnesota, like we've discussed about on the program for the past couple of weeks, Minnesota trying to trade up to 7 to get someone like J.J. McCarthy, I think 11 is probably a perfect place to get Brock Bowers at, because you think that Atlanta probably won't take him, Chicago probably won't, and I can't remember who's at number 10, but the Jets won't take him. I don't think.
How are you sure these teams won't take him?
Because
why would the Jets not take Brock Bowers?
The Falcons have Kyle Pitts. The Bears have Cole Kmet. And I don't think that the Jets, they need to shore up the offensive line to protect Aaron Rodgers more than they need a tight end, in my opinion.
So you're just making a bunch of assumptions here. And, I hear what you're saying, Michael. I get it. But, Cole Kmet, thank you for your call. Cole Kmet? Really? Again, we're talking about when it comes to Bowers. And I'm still nervous about Bowers because I'm not sure Bowers does anything really, really well, elitely, if that makes any sense, right? He's super athletic for a tight end, but he's not super athletic, period, for the NFL. He's not Javon Curse. So that's not really an elite skill. He does not have elite hands. He's not a great inline blocker, but he's that Swiss Army knife that can play everywhere. And so it's the idea that you can move him around and throw him the ball and get the right matchups to where he's probably too big for a DB, and he's too fast for a linebacker, which is what Travis Kelce is. That's what we're talking about here. And when I think about Travis Kelce, I don't look at Travis Kelce as a tight end the way that we're talking about Cole Kmet as a tight end. And plus, Kyle Pitts is a bust. He's not awful, but he has certainly not been the superstar can't miss that people thought he was going to be coming out of Florida. And that was, I think, was a lot based on his athleticism and what he could develop into. With Bowers, he has been that in college, what he should be in the NFL. But I'm not making an assumption at all that the Bears at 9 that have 2 receivers, they think they have a left tackle, they've got an edge rusher, they've got a corner, they're going to have their number 1 quarterback. I am not ruling out that they take Brock Bowers. Not if he's as good as Mark Dominic says he is. Hell, I'm not even ruling that the Chargers don't take him at 5 if he's as good and thought of as highly in league circles as Mark Dominic says he is. Just like when it comes to Alt, it's oh yeah, well, we could trade back with this team. Well, first of all, that team has to want to trade back with you. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you trade back, there's no guarantee that you get your player. And I'll give you an example. Let's use Joe Alt as the guy we're talking about here. He's on the board at 7, and so is one of the receivers. Neighbors, Harrison, Adunze, one of those guys, they're also available. And Chicago at 9, or let's use Bowers, as the available receiver. Chicago at 9 calls you at 7 and says, hey, we'll give you next year's 2, or we'll give you next year's 1. We'll do something, well, next year's 1 you have to take, but we'll give you next year's 2. They don't have a second this year. We'll give you next year's 2. We're going to move from 9 to 7. There's a chance with a rookie quarterback, Chicago may not be very good, so that may be the 35th pick in next year's draft. Very, very solid asset. It's not great, but it's solid. Well, Atlanta's got Jake Matthews. They're not going to take Joe Alt. So, yeah, make the move. Flop. Now you go to 9. Now you still get Joe Alt, right? Oh, no. The Jets just called Atlanta, and now they've moved from 10 to 8, and now they take Joe Alt. So if you really like the player and he's there, you have to take him. And again, any of these trade-out scenarios move you off of the 7th pick, and I think there are 8 elite prospects in this draft. So if you don't stay within the 8, there's a chance you're not getting one of the elite prospects in this draft, and there's no point to have gone through the misery of last season the way that we went through the misery of last season to not pick up an elite player in this year's draft. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So speaking of Bowers, the draft guru of The Athletic, Dane Brugler, was on Robbie and Rex Road today, and they asked him about this particular situation. What Brugler had to say, and why I think it may even make it more palatable to take Bowers with the 7th pick. We'll get to that, and, of course, we're right to your phones. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Would that be a crazy option for the Titans at number 7 overall? How do you view Bowers and where he fits into this mold here?
And crazy, no. Risky, sure. Just because you look at the hit rate at the position and drafting a tight end that early, especially if he's drafted at number 7 overall, he's going to enter the NFL as one of the highest paid tight ends in the league. So, there is risk involved, but like you said, when you watch his tape, you just come away saying, okay, yeah, this guy is just so dynamic. He can be a playmaker. It really comes down, if you're a general manager, you have to have a lot of trust in your offensive play caller that he's going to understand how best to use a talent like this, because you can't draft Brock Bowers 7th overall and then just plug him in as an inline tight end and not really feature him like he should be featured. So with Brock Bowers, that's the key, is the versatility that he offers. You want to line him up as a slot receiver, he can do that no problem. You want to line him up outside, he could be an X receiver. I mean, he could be a Z. You can line him up in the backfield. You can line him up on the wing. Doing whatever you want to do with Brock Bowers is kind of the key to really opening up everything he can do and what that means to the entire offense, because the defense has to account for Brock Bowers on every single play.
That was Dane Brugler, the Athletics draft guru. His new guide, The Beast, is out. If you're a subscriber of The Athletic, you can pull it up. And Robbie asked him right there, he said, so what about Bowers at 7? And the two things he said when it comes to Bowers at 7 that he'd say, well, it's risky. First of all these picks are risky, right? Like, you blow this pick for whatever reason, and you're probably getting fired. Like, I'm just going to tell it like it is. This is the 7th pick. You don't get to miss on the 7th pick in a draft unless you pull something out of your ass. You don't get to pick, miss on the 7th pick and then get to make it again a year later when you're picking at 4. Normally teams, we want to see some progress around here. So the two things he said that he would say, okay, here's the two things with Bowers. Number one, because of the rookie wage scale, Bowers would be one of the highest paid tight ends in the NFL if you drafted him 7th. So, why do I give a rat's ass about that? That's Kansas City's problem. That's San Francisco's problem. That is when Sam Laporta signs a new contract, Detroit's problem. That's not my problem. Right? Like, I'm drafting a tight end 7th, and he's going to be making a lot of money. But anybody that's, you took a guard last year, and he was like the 3rd highest paid player on your team. Like, that's just reality. Why do I care about what the rookie wage scale says Brock Bowers would make? So I don't care about that. And then the second thing was, do you have a coach that can feature Brock Bowers? Because you can play him in the slot, you can put him at an X position, you can put him in the backfield. Basically, if the Titans lined it up the way I think they could line it up, which is with the 5 eligible pass catchers on any given play being Ridley, Hopkins, Bowers, Okonkwo, and then one of the 2 running backs, or if you want to use the 2 running backs, which I think would be awesome if they found a way to use the 2 running backs in a passing game. But in that sense, you've got those 5 eligible receivers. Well, now just pick the matchup, right? Like, where's their worst guy? All right, he's on Hopkins. Throw the ball to Hopkins. Simple as that to me. But the idea is, well, if you don't have a creative coach who doesn't use him right and they use him like a regular tight end, you're not going to get all the benefits of Brock Bowers, and he wouldn't be worth the 7th pick. Well, don't we all expect Brian Callahan to be able to take what he's given and make the most out of it? Isn't that why you hire the guru coach? Because it's like, hey, not everything here is going to be great, but I need you to take what we've got, and I need you to make it work. Sean McVay took over a Rams team that was awful on offense, Jeff Fisher's last year. People thought Jared Goff might be a bust, and it was like, all right, Sean McVay, figure it out. And all of a sudden, guys like Tyler Higbee started becoming big parts of that offense because it's what they had, right? That's what good coaches do. So I don't worry about the fact that Bowers would be making a lot of money. That's not my problem. And I don't worry about, do you have a coach that would be able to use Brock Bowers the right way to take advantage of his skill set? I freaking hope so. Or else you hired a bad coach. And I don't think they hired a bad coach. So, I mean, just, again, those don't bother me. And, Brugler kept talking about he's one of the 10 best players in the draft. Well, again, you're picking 8th. You're picking 7th. I think there's 8 elite players in this draft. And you got to come away with one, or else there's no reason to stink so bad and get the good pick. One texter says, Brian Callahan has not coached a system that emphasizes a premier tight end, has he? Not in Denver, not in Cincinnati. So I believe he was in Detroit when Eric Ebron was there, who they had taken very high in the first round. And I know Ebron did not have the career in Detroit that he ultimately, he became a very good player. It's kind of like Evan Ingram, where he became a better player somewhere else he went. But when he went to Indy with Andrew Luck, he was a much better player. Again, if you're going to look at Brock Bowers as a tight end, just TE, that's it. Like, that's the position he's playing, and I want him on the line, and I want him to be Frank Wycheck. If that's going to be the way you play him, he's not worth the 7th pick. But if you're going to look at Bowers and run him out there and break the huddle, and the defensive coach does not know when you're in the huddle where he might go, and so he might be in the slot, and that might be a problem. He might be outside, and that'll be a problem. He might be in the backfield, and that'll be a problem. He might be. That's a problem for a defensive coach. Remember how much we used to get on Todd Downing all the time when all of a sudden, 1st and 10, and running on the field is Cody Hollister, NWI, Jeff Swaim, and Derrick Henry. Hey, defense, we're running. And then Derrick Henry would lose a yard because he'd get tackled in the backfield. He'd get hit 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He'd lose 1 yard because he's Derrick Henry, and he'd make up the other 3. And then all of a sudden on 2nd and 11, out go those guys, and in comes Woods and Burks and Chig and Hilliard would come in the game. Hey, defense, we're passing. Well, if you've got Brock Bowers on your team, you don't have to do that. And I would hope, and we'll see how Brian Callahan plays it, but I would hope that DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley are staying on the football field. And between the 2 running backs, there is no tell, at least not yet, as to whether or not you're passing or running, though I will say Pollard, as far as the analytics are concerned, Pollard is a far better runner than he is a pass catcher, and he's a better runner than Spears. And so as of right now, probably view it as Pollard's the running back, and Spears is more of the receiving running back. But I do think that the Titans wanted at least a little bit of, just a little bit of interchange there when it comes to those 2 guys. But if you're just going to say, okay, Bowers is playing tight end, the traditional tight end, the Mark Andrews tight end, and Mark Andrews is a good player, but if that's what we're talking about, you can't pick him 7th. But if Brian Callahan is going to feature him as a Swiss Army knife super player, then you absolutely can take him 7th because he's got the talent in order to go 7th. 615-737-1025. A lot of phones on this. We'll continue. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Again, this all started because Mark Dominic, former NFL general manager, said on SiriusXM NFL radio that even if Joe Alt's there, it is a slam dunk. Bowers at 7, Stockton to Malone. I'm like, what? So we've reopened the Bowers case. And I'm starting to kind of talk myself into it a little bit, but it's still kind of hard for me not to get over the fact that they don't have a tackle. More of your phones, Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. I'm going to give something away. But first, I'm going to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Ian, X the phones so nobody can win until I tell you to call in. FanDuel Sportsbook's my official sportsbook app. The NBA play-in tournament gives teams the chance to play their way into the postseason, so it only seems right that new customers on FanDuel can play their way into $150. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, to use during the NBA playoffs. So the Lakers are going to be in this play-in tournament. The Bulls are going to be in this play-in tournament. There's a lot of big names that are going to. LeBron's obviously in it with the Lakers in there, so whatever. 3-pointers made in the game, over, under, first basket, you name it. It's all there. Just go to FanDuel.com/JGM to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com/JGM. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, and my official sportsbook app. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issue is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. So, now I'm going to give something away. Who wants a 4-pack of tickets to see the Sounds take on the Omaha Storm Chasers at First Horizon Park on Thursday? Be caller 5 when Ian unlocks the phones at 615-737-1025, and you will be going to see the Sounds. Ian, you may unleash the hounds.
If Brock is there, I think that's too easy of a pick. If not, it feels like it's an offensive tackle. Could they take another pass rusher type of guy? Sure. But my gut instinct is that they want to make sure they secure the offensive line. They did what you said. right? You get a pass-catching running back on Tony Pollard. You got Tyjae Spears, who obviously can catch the ball well in the backfield. Those two will hopefully complement each other and work really well. But then they also said, hey, look, we're going to solidify our wide receiver room with Treylon Burks, but Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. We've got 3 guys, 3 horses, so we don't have to take a wide receiver, in the first round. We feel really good. So it goes back down to me. It's the 3 choices. It's if the tight end's there, I think it's a Stockton to Malone. I think it's a slam dunk. But if the tight end's not there, I think it's offensive tackle. And then if it's not, if for whatever reason they like only one of them and that player's off the board, I think that they might be the first team to take the defensive, take Dallas Turner.
There you go. That was the Dominic take on SiriusXM NFL Radio that's got us started. Hey, are we in the Bowers discussion here? Texter says, if the Giants decide to roll with Daniel Jones as their quarterback and draft Joe Alt at 6, would it be crazy for the Titans to take one of these premier receivers at 7? Having a guy like Adunze or Neighbors not only elevates the passing attack, but also gives them a clear-cut number 1 receiver going into next year with an older Ridley and Hopkins being uncertain. So I think that, to me, Neighbors and Harrison are the 2 elite receivers. I know everybody says there's 3 and then there's the drop. I think that there's Neighbors and Harrison, then Adunze, then everybody else. And so I don't count Adunze in that group with Neighbors. I think they're different. I think they're the number 1 thing. And for a while I was stuck on, they got to use this pick for their tackle. Like, it has to be their tackle that they use that 7th pick. So if they trade out of 7 and they move down, and then they still have to take Fashanu or Faltanu or Mims or one of those guys later in the first round that is their left tackle. But I think now what I've decided is sticking to the Elite 8. And somebody texted in and said Adunze is elite. Again, this is just my grouping. And I might be willing to throw Jaden Daniels out of this because I think Jaden Daniels is so offensive specific. Like, if you're going to draft Jaden Daniels, and I see a lot of, Vince Young in Jaden Daniels, and I thought that Jaden Daniels, I when I say Vince Young, I thought Vince Young was awesome. And I think that the Titans, Jeff Fisher, just screwed up because he's such a moron when it comes to developing quarterbacks and everything else that, he ruined Vince Young as much as anything. They didn't put an offense around Vince Young. They didn't design the offense for Vince Young. They had that bozo Norm Chow as his coordinator. So I see a lot of Vince Young and Jaden Daniels. So if you're going to draft Jaden Daniels, you got to do things the Jaden Daniels way, like the offense around Jaden Daniels. So that wouldn't fit Brian Callahan. But again, I think there's 8 elite players, the 3 quarterbacks, Harrison, Neighbors, Alt, Dallas Turner, who was an 18-year-old, rushing the passer in the SEC, and Brock Bowers. But don't have Adunze in there, don't have Fashanu in there, don't have, these are the guys where there's not really a knock. Don't have Terrion Arnold in there. Certainly don't have J.J. McCarthy in there. But I think that if you've got the 7th pick in a draft where there are 8 elite players, you need one of those players. And that would be the most important thing. So when you say, okay, if the Giants take Alt, then could you go and grab Neighbors? Yes. You need elite players. And nobody will remember. And I understand you got to draft for need at some point, and you got to have a tackle. When you talk about the right tackle story, you got to also have a left tackle. But nobody will remember 6 years from now what you needed when you went into the draft. They'll just remember whether or not you drafted Aaron Donald or you didn't. One texter says, Bowers might be very special, but I still don't see him adding more offensive production to the team than a top left tackle. If the Titans have already had at least a mediocre left tackle on the roster, then I might agree going with Bowers. However, the tackles are the absolute worst in the league. What is the point of adding another offensive weapon if Levis is still feeling pressure early on most snaps? So that's, I think, why they brought in Andrus Peat. Remember, they brought him in on a visit. Andrus Peat is a left side of the line offensive lineman. He's played at left tackle. He's played at left guard. I believe he was either a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro at left guard. Then last year, he kicked out to left tackle because Trevor Penning, remember when Arden Key, made Trevor Penning his in that first game. It got to the point where they couldn't play Trevor Penning there anymore, and Andrews Pete was the left tackle of the Saints. And I think Andrews Pete, for the most part, was solid. Wasn't terrible, wasn't great, wasn't. They brought him in for a visit. They didn't sign him. And I didn't like that they didn't sign him because I think he could be a good swing tackle even if they draft Alt. I'd like to have the insurance there. But would that be the mediocre left tackle that we're talking about here, signing Andrews Pete to a 1-year, $10 million contract if you draft Bowers, if you draft Neighbors, if you draft one of those other players as opposed to Alt? Because, again, I don't know if we look at these and this is where you grade out the players. 8-0 is 7-0, 8-0, however you want to go, is the best. Dominic said on Friday on NFL radio that 8-0 is the best for a non-quarterback. So if Bowers is an 8-0 and Alt is an 8-0, then do you just default to, we need a left tackle? So take the 8-0 at left tackle. But what if Bowers is an 8-0 and Alt is a 7-5? Now you're taking a worse player. And again, that goes back to the whole concept of elite touchdown scorer versus non-touchdown scorer. LD from McMinnville says, all I have to say is your draft night show will be a must-watch. Chris, Derek, Trevor, Jared. And, again, I don't want to sit back. I don't want to be the guy who, is like, I don't want to be a carnival act here, what I'm saying. But, if you've ever listened to the draft shows in years past, you know that the Titans pick is usually pretty eventful on the 102.5 The Game Draft Night show. The Dylan Radins, the Monty Rice, the guard last year. I couldn't believe they took a freaking guard at 11. Oof, can't believe it. One texter says, Mark Dominic's record as a GM in Tampa was 28-52. If he was really that good, why wouldn't he have lasted more than 4 years as a GM? First of all, every general manager that's on the radio has been fired. Floyd Reese got fired, and I'd like to think that Floyd Reese is a pretty good general manager. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Dominic has a scouting background, and if you look at what happened in Tampa Bay with him as the coach, I think there were a couple things at play. First off, ownership wanted to hire Greg Schiano. I think that's probably part of it. But the second part is they missed on Josh Freeman. And I've talked to Dominic about them missing on Josh Freeman. But they didn't miss on Gerald McCoy, and they didn't miss on Levante David, and they didn't miss on a lot of the players that got second contracts. You guys bitched for forever that John Robinson was such a bad general manager because none of these guys got second contracts. Dominic's guys did get second contracts. So I have a lot of respect when it comes to his ability to spot talent and some of the things that he said. They stick with me. Does everything that he says stick with me? No. I mean, I'm still leaning towards rolling with Alt over Bowers at 7. And he thinks it's a slam dunk to go with Bowers. But I take what he says seriously. I mean, his opinion matters to me. 615-737-1025. Speaking of Dominic and his opinion, there was one other thing he just kept hitting on when I was listening to him on SiriusXM NFL Radio on Friday, that I went and basically did a research project today on. And it really probably should change, at least for me. I'm not going to say it should change for you. It can do whatever it wants for you. It changes for me the entire concept of trading down. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. Score big with Lee Company and the Predators in the Predators 10K Power Play giveaway. Enter for a chance to win a Kohler home generator or $10,000 towards Lee Company Home Services. Go to leecompany.com/giveaway to enter, and they are taking contest entries until April 20th. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So I almost texted Mark Dominic, the old Bucks GM who's on Sirius XM NFL Radio. I almost texted him Ian before the show today, and I almost said, hey, you're pretty much going to be the entire show today on today's program. What happened was Saturday, before the Preds game, I've actually discovered, now that I have a puppy, and I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I've discovered there's a lot more day when you get things done, between 6, 7, 8 o'clock-ish. And so I took my puppy on a walk on Saturday. He made it 20 minutes, and then I had to pick him up and carry him home the rest of the way. But he doesn't weigh very much, so it was pretty easy. But I was listening to Mark Dominic on Sirius XM Saturday from his show on Friday, and there was just a lot of good information in there. It kind of makes me, miss when we used to have a GM here. There was one thing that he kept bringing up that really stuck with me, which was he doesn't really seem to value picks that are outside of the top 60, which are basically the first two rounds. And we always talk about trade down, trade down, trade down, trade down. And Dominic's not so much of a fan of trading down because he likes the picks, again, that are inside the top 60.
When I was GM of the Bucks, we did some research into it, not statistics, and that would be actually a fun analytic project to do, to be able to have to go back over years and kind of look at the way that you traded up or traded back and what was the success rate. The only thing that we really kind of looked at is right around pick 55 to 60, right in that range. The more picks you can get in that top 60, the better chance you are, just the better you are. So instead of having 2/3, I'd rather have a first and 2 seconds. Or, can I trade a 3, 4, and a 5 to go get a 2? Or can I, the other thing that I thought was very important that the draft point charts took a while to actually even come around to was the 5th-year option and how valuable that was to sit there and say, I've got them for 5 years, not 4. That's why I traded up back in the day to take Doug Martin as a running back, because I was like, hey, I've got him for 5 years, plus I've got a tag. I've got a running back for 6 years, which is basically some of their lifespan. That's a really good value. If he plays 6 years here, that's actually pretty darn good that you've got a running back and you've got it under control and at a very reasonable cost. So that all being said, I'm a believer trading up is going to be much more beneficial than it was trading back and accumulating picks.
Okay, so I'm not just going to say, okay, well, Mark Dominic says, he only cares about the top 60 picks, so forget about everything after. But I did a research assignment today on the program. If you're looking at the stream, I have in front of you what is every draft choice Floyd Reese made as the Tennessee Titans. So this does not include the Oilers when he was the general manager, but from 1999 to 2006, every choice they made. And this was the hit rate on top 60 picks compared to the hit rate on 61 and on. And for Floyd Reese, he was 12 of 15. This, by the way, very subjective in terms of hits. But, I'm looking at this thinking like guy was a legitimate starter, contributor. 12 of 15 on hitting in the top 60. 17 of 62 from 61 on. So he was 80% inside the top 60, and he was 27% outside of the top 60. John Robinson, for his entire tenure as general manager of the Titans, was 9 of 15, 60% inside of the top 60. And from 61 on, he was 8 of 37, 22%. So Floyd was 27%, 61 on. Robinson was 22%. Now, Floyd had a crap load of, 60 plus picks, which makes me think he was probably the other way, than Mark Dominic. But again, he's talking about hitting at 60% with Robinson or 80% with Floyd. And my guess is you probably want to be about 70%, 75% is probably what's likely. I'll go back and do a Hall of Fame general manager like Polian or Bobby Beathard or something and see what they bat, in the top 60. So the more I look at it, I'm like, this kind of makes sense, that the top 60, obviously the best players come from the top of the draft. And then there's Tom Brady, that'll be later in there. But we all know that the best players come from the top of the draft. But it is significantly different than the top 60 from 61 and on. Which takes me to, they need to trade back, Jared. Well, we've already established that I believe there are 8 elite players in this draft, elite prospects, where there is not some sort of big knock on that prospect. Right? You're picking 7. So you really can't move far in order to make sure that you get one of those elite players. But here's the other problem. Who are they going to trade with? Trade with Atlanta, Jared. Atlanta has one top 60 pick, that's 43. I don't think Atlanta, unless they just are pants down for, say, Neighbors or Turner, whomever. I don't think Atlanta's trading you 43 just because they're afraid that you might take a guy that they want. I mean, the way to get them to trade for 43 is if they think that you may trade it with Chicago, and then Chicago at 9 can get the guy that they want, and it's like, okay, fine, we'll give you 43 because we're so desperate we want Neighbors. But that's probably not very likely. Atlanta has no other top 60 picks. They have 74, but again, 74 is not in the top 60. Chicago has one top 60 pick outside of the first pick, and that's 9. So you would have to take something for next year in order to make a trade with them, and it would have to be probably next year's second rounder. Again, now you're at 9. Now you run the risk of not getting one of these elite players, and you're doing it for a top 60 pick in next year's draft. The Jets at 10 only have 10. Their second rounder is in the hands of Green Bay because of Aaron Rodgers. And so what are you going to be able to get from them? Now, Minnesota has 11 and 23, but I'm not sure 11 and 23 will get them 7. Like, I'm not, or it absolutely probably gets them 7, but I'm not sure that they would deal that just for 7. You know, if I'm moving 11 and 23, I want to get up to 5. You know, I want something back in return. Minnesota has that, but then they have nothing else, and they don't have a second rounder next year. And then Denver doesn't have a second round pick. They only have 12. So if you want to trade back, which everybody, trade back, Jared, trade back with whom? Somebody has to want to do it. And then the question is, what are they going to give you? And best case scenario, to get a really good player, you have to take a pick in next year's draft. And I know a lot of you do not want picks in next year's draft. And if I was Rand Carthon, I'd be nervous about trading for picks in next year's draft because I don't know if I'm going to be here next year, given the fact that the owner seems to play musical chairs in terms of who she fires every year and who she blames for not being good. And guess what? Right now, the arrow's pointing at him because they just hired the coach. So the more I think about it, the more I'm like, okay, the key to this is to have these top 60 picks. You want me to trade down. 8 elite players, I've got the 7th pick. If I trade down, now I run the risk of not getting the elite player, and outside of Minnesota, who has the 23rd pick, none of these teams really have top 60 picks for me. So it makes the concept of trading down very difficult for me to see and to think that the Titans outside of Minnesota can find a dance partner that would be A, willing, and B, would have the resources in order to make you, or in this case, I guess, make me happy with what I would get in return out of it. Because at 11, I still got a shot of getting one of the elite 8 players in this draft, but I'm also getting 23, which is going to be a very solid prospect at either tackle or wide receiver. So I can consider it. But the other ones, Atlanta has to offer 43 in order to make it worth my while, and they're not going to do that. Chicago, the Jets, Denver, you got to offer me picks in next year's draft, and I don't know if you want picks in next year's draft. So just keep that in mind. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. By the way, is it not amazing that Floyd had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drafts with as the Titans? John Robinson had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it's not that big of a deal. He had 7 Floyd had 8, and they each made 15 top 60 picks. Robinson hit on 9. Floyd hit on 12. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. A lot of you want to weigh in on this. 615-737-1025. So we'll do that here on Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. And by the way, there is a lot of talk about J.J. McCarthy and the Patriots. Remember Charles Robinson said on Robbie and Rexroad last week? He said on the Robbie and Rexroad program that New England, he's hearing, has them as J.J. number 1 on their board. I'm not sure I buy that, but he is visiting New England today, and I do think there's a chance McCarthy ends up there, but I'll explain how it would have to happen, and we'll do that next. Hey, this week's Nashville's Best Deal is Prince's Hot Chicken, the original and iconic chicken joint. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. This gift card is only good for the Tanger outlets in Antioch and inside Assembly Food Hall in downtown Nashville.
I don't think there's a team at 4 or 5 or anybody there that is willing to move all the way back to 11 or 13 in this year's draft because they can get the player that they want. So I don't think for all the moving of heaven and earth of picks that there really is going to be a lot of movement. The 3 teams in 1, 2, and 3 need quarterbacks. The 4th team needs a wide receiver to go with Kyler Murray. So they may be able to go back just maybe to 6. But I mean, that's not a spot where a guy needs to move up to 4 to get a quarterback.
There you go. That was Ryan Leaf on Sirius XM with me yesterday. By the way, there is a Ryan Leaf take that we got to get to that Ryan Leaf take later today, and we will, which I'm very excited about.
Oh, yeah.
But we're talking about trading back, trading up, trading this. So today the New England Patriots are hosting J.J. McCarthy. And I don't know about you guys, but we've talked a lot about J.J. on this program because what J.J. does is he's not in my Elite 8. If he goes in the top 6, that pushes another elite player to you. And so it's not as if this is necessarily a Titans thing, but we're just kind of keeping our eyes on it because it's in the Titans neighborhood. And I think the assumption is that has been talked about a lot is Minnesota with the 2 first-round draft picks and, using next year's one to go up to 4 or 5 to take JJ. And, I mean, I don't think Ryan Leaf has any inside info there, but Ryan Leaf saying, no, Arizona needs a receiver, they're going to take a receiver. The Chargers need a receiver, they're probably going to take a receiver. So I think there's a lot of truth to that. Again, you make this trade with Minnesota, you may be punting on an elite player. Marvin Harrison Jr. is an elite player. But I can't get away from what Charles Robinson said last week on Robbie and Rexroad when he said that he heard somebody tell him that New England has J.J. McCarthy number 1 on their board, which I have a really hard time believing. But the one thing that I could see, and I brought this up last week, and I stand by it, is people are talking themselves into why McCarthy didn't do more in college. Now, I think that's bullcrap, but people talk themselves into a lot of things this time of year. But what McCarthy's strengths are the intangibles. He's a winner. He's a leader. He's tough because he played for Jim Harbaugh. And I can see Robert Kraft seeing that Michigan helmet and the tough winner, leader, and thinking that he's looking at the next Tom Brady. I can see it. But you can't take J.J. McCarthy third. And I don't know if Minnesota acquired that second first-round draft choice, and then they're going to use the third in order to get up to 4 to take the 4th best player or the 4th best choice. What I wonder is if this is a having a cake and eating it too scenario for both sides. A win-win. Where New England trades with Minnesota, and Minnesota moves up to 3 for Drake May. Because there are some people out there that do not like Drake May. I haven't studied Drake May enough to tell you whether or not, I would like him or pick him or want him to be my franchise quarterback. I watched him play a game last season, and I'm like, this kid's legit. And I've heard Tim Hasselbeck just howl over the moon when it comes to Drake May, and Tim called his games. So, I mean, I think that May is very much a top 3 prospect, and it would not surprise me if May goes number 2, which would screw the whole deal up. But I could see Minnesota. I don't know if you can justify trading 3 first-round picks to move to 5 to take the 4th best quarterback. But you can absolutely justify it to move to 3 to take the 2nd best quarterback, who you could argue would be a number 1 pick in another draft. If this was 2022, Drake May is the number 1 overall pick. Jacksonville trades out, and Drake May is the number 1 pick. And then New England gets J.J. McCarthy either at 11, or they can do what the Titans did in 2016 when they moved from 1 to 15 and they moved back up, I think, to 8 in order to get Conklin. So New England can move back. It is worth 3 first-round draft choices to move up to 3 because that's what happened when San Francisco did that 3 years ago and moved from 12 to 3. So Minnesota can convince themselves we're doing this because we're getting the number 2 quarterback on our board, or maybe May's the number 1 quarterback. Dan Orlovsky came out. He said that when it comes to Minnesota and Kevin O'Connell and Drake May, that it's like a match made in heaven. So if that's your guy, you can justify doing that to get our franchise quarterback for the next however many years. But I just don't think you can do that with Drake May. And if you're with J.J. McCarthy, and if you're New England, I don't think you can take J.J. McCarthy third. So you trade out. And I think your fans look at that and say, wow, that's a great trade. Because even though we drafted J.J. McCarthy and he might be good, he might not be good at 11, at 23, we draft a receiver or we draft a left tackle, which we don't have. So we get that second player. Then we get a high second rounder. We get a first next year. We're rebuilding our team around J.J. McCarthy. And if you're Minnesota, you say, we got our dude. So what? We won't be picking in the first round next year. We already have a left tackle and a true number one wide receiver. But that all gets screwed up if Washington takes Drake May at number 2. So that's kind of the thing I'm keeping an eye on there when it comes to all this Drake May chatter and the J.J. McCarthy chatter in New England and Minnesota. It's just something that, again, I could see happening. And then, if the guys you like are gone, maybe New England calls you for a trade. That I couldn't tell you. That I don't know. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Again, I think it's hard for the Titans to trade down. One texter says because if you want top 60 picks, the teams behind you don't have them. One texter says, why don't you compare to some GMs that actually won something? Well, you have to be referring to the Super Bowl because Floyd Reese won everything you can win except for the Super Bowl. So if you're saying Floyd doesn't count as a GM who won, again, he won everything you can win except for the Super Bowl, so you're just being an a-hole. But if you're saying, well, Robinson stinks and Floyd wasn't good enough, give me Bill Polian, give me Bobby Bethard, give me, one of these great general managers. Here's why I can't do that. Because I don't know. When I'm looking at a player that the Indianapolis Colts in 2004 drafted in the 6th round, I don't know if that player met or exceeded expectations or whatever it may be. Whereas I know that Eugene Amano picked 239th in the 2004 draft, was a legitimate starter for this team, and thus that's a hit in the 7th round. I know that Vincent Fuller at 108 in 2005 was a hit because he was the starting nickelback of this team. I can't tell you those hits or misses for other teams, and then I just have to look at the stats, and I just don't think, you could argue Ben Troop wasn't a bust because of the amount of games that Ben Troop started, and I love Ben Troop. I don't want to throw Ben Troop under the bus here, but Ben Troop was he was a bust. And so it's like, again, I don't want to throw Ben Troop under the bus here, but I just feel like I don't know the other teams the way that I know the Titans. I know the Titans players. Going back to Robinson, for instance. I know that Jayon Brown at 155 in 2017 was a hit. I know that. Because I know it, but you may not know that if you don't follow the Titans. So that's why I used those two guys, as far as trying to judge the top 60 versus the non-top 60. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will get back into your phones at 615-737-1025. Now, let me just say this. There is a take that I got hammered for. Hammered. That I will die on the hill of the take. And I did some research for actually something I did yesterday on Sirius. And I feel even better about my opinion. We'll get to that next. Here on Stillman and Company, let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. Talk about another hill I'll die on. Hiller is absolutely fabulous. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. They are the only guys that I trust with things as important as my HVAC, my plumbing, my electrical, you name it, it's Hiller. Smile and save this month with Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, because from now until April 30th, you can take advantage of big savings on your home. Enjoy up to $1,500 off select new HVAC systems, whole home water filtration and descalers, or select new whole home generators. If you've been waiting for the right time to upgrade or replace your system, now is the time to do it. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. Stillman and Company, hey, join the Nashville Super Speedway and the city of Lebanon for a Speedway on the Square this Saturday, April 20th from 1 to 6 in downtown Lebanon. I didn't even know there was a downtown to Lebanon, but I guess there is. No disrespect to Lebanon. Stop by and bring the family for a day filled with inflatables, face painting, balloon art, live music, and a ticket giveaway to the Ally 400, the NASCAR Series race at 3:30 p.m. Well, that's exciting. So, I will die on the hill, the take that I had last week. TD didn't like it. Robbie didn't like it. Joe didn't like it. That Sam Darnold is better than you think. I think Sam Darnold is better than Tua. I think Tua sucks, and I think Sam Darnold is a good quarterback, and I think Sam Darnold's second half of that 2022 season when David Tepper got out of it in Carolina and they went 4-2 and got back into the playoff hunt, to me, showed me that when you are freed of the shackles of New York stupidity and Carolina stupidity, Sam Darnold's got some game. And I mean, I just got killed. And that does not mean that I will take this take back. In fact, I stand by it. And there's all the talk about Minnesota trading for J.J. McCarthy and everything else. And I'm like, just go with Darnold. You got 2 receivers. You got a good offensive coach. You've got a solid defense. Just go with Darnold. So Ryan Leaf was on my Sirius XM show yesterday, and I asked him. I said, would Minnesota be better off trading all the picks for J.J. or rolling with a guy that I believe in more than others, Sam Darnold? You're the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings now. Ryan Leaf has taken over. And you've got 2 choices. 3 first-round draft choices to move up to 4 or 5 and draft J.J. McCarthy, who would be the 4th quarterback in this class, or stay at 11. Maybe you pick J.J. McCarthy. Maybe J.J.'s off the board. I don't know. But stay at 11, use your 11th choice, use your 23rd choice, and keep your first-rounder next year. And if you don't get J.J. McCarthy, say he goes off the board before you pick, Sam Darnold's your starting quarterback. Which one would you think would be more advantageous for the Vikings to win games now and in the future?
They can't give away all those picks to move up to 5. You're going to get the 4th best or possibly 5th best quarterback in the league in this year's draft in comparison. So that's out of the realm of possibility. That's not going to work. Sam Darnold is more than capable of being the starting quarterback. You give him Justin Jefferson. He's never had a wide receiver like Justin Jefferson. DJ Moore was pretty darn good there in Carolina that first season, but he hasn't had that type of player as a starting quarterback. And Kevin O'Connell can get the most out of him. This team, if they just had any kind of competent quarterback play, they would have been a playoff team at the end of last year. So utilize the picks.
Okay. And not only that, I did some research because the topic that I had on SiriusXM was, again, that Minnesota should just stick with Darnold and roll with it. The one that you guys are like, Sam Darnold sucks, Jared. And I'm like, nah. Here's what I found that I found to be fascinating, right? Because I think Tua is a product of his environment in Miami. When they didn't have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle was a rookie, the owner got suspended because he was trying to get rid of Tua to go get Tom Brady. Like, that's how little they thought of him, and then they got Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniel, and now Tua's great in those noon kickoffs nobody ever watches. But they always bring back that Floyd Reese thing, right? How would Kerry Collins have done at Alcorn State? How would Steve McNair have done at Penn State? Well, the only comparable I have for Sam Darnold's 2022 with Carolina is Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield in 2022 with the Carolina Panthers started the year as their quarterback. Now, I know Matt Rule got fired in the middle of the year. But, Ian, I would argue this is as close to an apples-to-apples comparison as you can get.
Okay.
They both started 6 games for the Carolina Panthers in the same season.
That is the same, yeah.
Baker was 1-5 with a 58% completion percentage, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a QB rating of 74.4. Darnold was 4-2. Baker 1-5, Darnold 4-2. Darnold, 59% completion, Baker 58. Darnold, 7 touchdowns, 3 picks. Again, Baker 6-6. And Darnold had a QB rating of 92.6 compared to Baker's 74.4. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I just watched Baker Mayfield with good coaching and receivers signed for $100+ million. I've said this about Baker for a long time. I thought Baker was good as a rookie. Then they screwed him up. Freddie Kitchens, and they brought in Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, and so now we're going to throw the ball up and down the yard, and I'm like, oh, God, do not put that on that young kid, and they did, and he failed. Then all of a sudden Stefanski comes in. They start running the ball with Nick Chubb a lot, and they make the playoffs, and they win a playoff game for the first time in forever, and people like Baker. And then Baker gets hurt the next year and plays through an injury. And they're like, nah, Baker sucks now. And so the owner goes out and pays all the money for Deshaun Watson. So Baker goes to Carolina, where the owner is just as stupid. And Baker, with a bad coach and a bad team, Baker was 1-5. Darnold, with the same team, was 4-2. And had a much higher quarterback rating, more touchdowns, less interceptions. And Baker in a solid situation with Mike Evans and Godwin and Dave Canales as the offensive coordinator last year, parlayed that to a $100 million contract. So I feel even more secure in my position about Sam Darnold. So let's see what Sam Darnold, with a year of Kyle Shanahan under his belt being the backup in San Francisco, with Kevin O'Connell as his coach, with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, let's see what he does instead of mortgaging the future for J.J. McCarthy. And then if he sucks, then you guys can say, Jared, your Sam Darnold take was terrible. But I am telling you, folks, again, Baker just signed for $100 million, and you guys didn't say, how could Baker sign for $100 million? In fact, what happened to Baker, that 1 year prove it, bridge, Tampa, that deal, was a deal I thought Darnold was going to get in the same offseason from another team. In fact, I thought Arthur Smith was going to be smart enough to sign Darnold. And then that way, when Ritter sucked, if Ritter sucked, they make the move to Darnold. And Darnold would have put that team into the playoffs. Instead, they signed a true backup in Heineke who stinks, and Arthur's fired. Again, you can disagree with me, but I feel very strongly, and the closest apples-to-apples comparison about that crap hole in Carolina is Baker went 1-5 and Darnold went 4-2. Baker had a QB rating of 74.4. Sam Darnold was 92.6. Had the same players around him, same receiver, same line, same everything. Now they changed the coach, but Steve Wilkes was a defensive guy. So it's probably the same offensive guys calling the plays, stuff like that. So I'm just saying, make of that what you will. Alex from Franklin says, Jared, do you think that Drake May could be this year's Will Levis where he falls in the draft? I don't think he falls out of the first round, but I do think he can fall. Let me say this. This is going to be an unpopular opinion. And I know that people go, if Drake May is available at 7, I would draft Drake May and trade Will Levis. Now, I don't know what Will Levis would go for on the trade market because on one hand, Justin Fields went for a bag of footballs on the trade market. But I think Fields sucks. I think Fields blows and that, Chicago had no choice but to draft Caleb Williams. Levis, I think, has the potential to be a good quarterback. I'm not going to say that he's going to be a franchise guy because I don't know that. I could see him busting the same way I could see him making it. I can't see Fields making it. And so I do wonder in this league where Minnesota doesn't have a quarterback and they're behind you, Vegas doesn't have a quarterback and they're behind you, Denver doesn't have a quarterback and they're behind you. I do wonder if one of these teams sees Will Levis, what he did last year, and says, hell, let's trade next year's second rounder for him because now that solves our, quarterback issue. And it's not like drafting a guy in the first round, but there's even more proof of concept right now because we've seen Levis through 1 year. And we know he's not going to be a complete terrible quarterback. We know he's not going to be Joey Harrington. We know he's got a shot to be a good quarterback, and he's got all the measurables for a starter. So let's do it. But that's what I would do. If May is there at 7, I'd take him because I think of it in two ways. You've got Will Levis under contract for 3 more years. You're going to have to decide soon enough what to do with Levis. You'd have May for 5 years. 5 years on a rookie contract with Drake May. And then, quite frankly, I just think May's better. I think he has more potential. I think he's a better prospect. And that would be the move. And I like Levis fine. But you're like, will he fall out of the first round? Hell, I'd take him because I think he's an elite level prospect. One texter says, Jared, what if Bill Callahan is really given the stamp of approval for Skoronski at left tackle, but the Titans don't want to lose leverage in the draft? That strategy could change everything. Yeah, I don't think you come out and say he's a left guard if you're thinking about playing him at left tackle because then you got to do the switcheroo to him, and I don't think teams do that. One texter says 100% trade Levis and take May. So, Blair from Spring Hill says, you picked Kenny Pickett to win MVP. No, I did not. I picked Joe Burrow to win MVP. Joe Burrow finished just as far away from the MVP as Kenny Pickett did. I said when doing FanDuel spots that Kenny Pickett at plus 1,400 was a good choice. That's an odds play. Now, I liked Pickett last year after the preseason, and I thought Pittsburgh was gonna get it done offensively, and they didn't. But do not, again, people use that MVP. No, I did not. I said it was an odds play on FanDuel. My pick was Joe Burrow. And again, Joe Burrow finished just as far away. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on our program. One texter says, I'm overthinking it. Don't believe your lying eyes. What? With, like he's freaking out on Sam Darnold. I'm telling you. Don't believe your lying eyes. I watched Darnold. I like Darnold. 615-737-1025. So Kentucky basketball hired their coach. Did you see what Kentucky basketball did yesterday? They filled the arena for a coach they hated when they hired him. We got to touch on that next. Then we're back to your phones. Stillman and Company here, 102.5-1063 The Game.
I'm about to break tradition. Amen. I'm about to break tradition. At every one of these press conferences, the coach comes up and he stands there with the AD and they take a picture with a jersey that they just made that ends up in a closet somewhere. We're not doing that here. This jersey is in a hallowed place in my home because it's the jersey that I got to wear with my teammates and all of Kentucky Nation in a national championship game in the Meadowlands in New York. And that's not just a jersey that's going to go in a closet. It's a jersey that has blood, sweat, and tears and love, and is all of us together.
So Mark Pope, Kentucky's new basketball coach, basically held a political rally at Rupp Arena yesterday where, instead of, I will cut taxes, and everybody chanted, it was like, we're gonna win together, and the big blue nation ate it up. So a couple of things. Here's the news flash. Number one, everybody wins a press conference. Everybody wins their opening press conference. I got two coaches in my head of guys that have won the press conference, and fans walked out of it saying, I love this man. The first was Jeremy Pruitt, who ended up with 5 on-the-record wins because of 2 vacated seasons and a 6-year show cause. Couldn't put a mask on his face, but you loved him in the press conference. And Kenny Payne, the worst basketball coach in the history of college basketball at my school, Louisville, he won the press conference. He finished 12-52. Now, so I don't care about what Mark Pope said or whatever. But here's what I think is amazing. How quickly the UK fan base just ate that bull crap up. That's the first thing. But what's really amazing is how quickly they did a 180. He did not coach a game between Thursday night and Sunday afternoon. But again, the entire fan base went from panic and rejection and a feeling of a helplessness for hiring a BYU coach with 2 NCAA tournament appearances, no NCAA tournament wins, when they thought they were going to get a Billy Donovan or a Brad Stevens or a Jay Wright or a Scott Drew, and they end up with this guy, and they are a full-blown panic. And then, without hearing the guy talk, because yesterday was the press conference, so they filled the arena for the press conference. People had already made up their mind. He was the greatest coach since Calipari showed up the first time. How does that happen? At least at my school, we heard the coach talk. And even then, there's a lot of skepticism for me about our new coach. And one of my best friends hired the guy. But there's still some skepticism because, again, I've seen coaches win press conferences. Let's get the basketballs out there and win some games. But not at UK. And here's why. Because Kentucky fans, more so than anything, just want hope. That's why they were done with Cal. Because the idea of, Cal's got a great recruiting class. Well, what'd that get you? You lost St. Peter's, lost to Oakland, lost to Kansas State. So the idea that Cal's got a great recruiting class coming next year, that doesn't give you any hope. This guy gets hired. His resume does not meet the standards that Kentucky basketball thought they were entitled to when it came to getting a new coach. And they panicked. They freaked out. They went crazy. All of those things. But because Kentucky fans want hope, they just decided overnight, you know what? This is a great hire. Because there are 2 sets of people, in my opinion, those who seek out affirmation and those who seek out information. Every single person that piled into Rupp Arena yesterday doesn't want information as to whether or not Mark Pope is a good coach. They want affirmation that he's the next great Kentucky basketball coach. Rupp, Joby Hall, Rick Pitino, Tubby Smith, John Calipari, Mark Pope. That's all they want. They just want hope. And I heard Joe this morning, and he was like, well, they packed that building, so I guess all those fans that were freaking out Thursday night, I guess there were only 12 internet fans, and it was a silent minority or a vocal minority that was out there crapping on Mark Pope. No. It was the majority of Kentucky fans. But what happened is they knew they had two choices. Be skeptical of their hire and think, maybe our basketball program isn't all it's made out to be, given the fact that we got turned down by everybody we thought we could hire. Or we can pretend that this guy's going to be the greatest coach we ever hired. And they chose that. And I'm not surprised they chose that. And I got to say, we have Matt Jones on the show. When Kentucky gets ready to play Tennessee or Vanderbilt or the SEC tournament or whatever, I'm disappointed in Matt Jones. It's one thing for Johnny Fan to go crazy at a coaching hire and, just go nuts and say it's a terrible whatever. It's another thing for somebody who I thought had the capacity to be critical of the school. Like an information guy over an affirmation guy. I have a lot of respect for Jones. There are very few people that I think are really, really good at this. He's one of them. Like, I would argue that Matt Jones might have more talent than I do. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this. I do think quite highly of myself as a radio host. But I was so disappointed how Matt Jones went from Thursday night of this is the worst thing ever to today of this is the best thing ever. When the guy hasn't coached a game. The guy hasn't done anything that would change his opinion. When we at Louisville hired Pat Kelsey, fans were freaking out, and I was like, look, man, if Josh Hurd thinks this guy's a good enough coach, like, that's good enough for me. And so I think, let's see how it plays, but I think he'll be a good coach. Has the press conference, wins all those people over, and I'm still the same way, which is, hey, if Josh Hurd hired the guy, I'm on his side, but, I'm not going to sit here and say our coach is the best. I'm like, let's play some basketball, and then we can decide whether or not he's good. So, it's embarrassing. For Matt Jones, who is as smart as he is, it's embarrassing. I don't think Clay Travis would have done a 180 on Greg Schiano if Tennessee had followed through and made him the coach. I think he would have gone crazy and stayed crazy. Jones went crazy and then did a 180 because I think he wanted to. He wanted the affirmation, not the information. I'm disappointed in that. Kentucky fans, I expect. Jones, not so much. One texter says UT fans were crying the blues when they hired Josh Heupel. It's no different. No, it is different. Because Tennessee fans waited for Josh Heupel to win before they changed their opinion. Kentucky fans didn't even listen to this guy talk, and they changed their opinion. He didn't even have the press conference. They went crazy Thursday night, and they all packed the place for the press conference on Sunday, which means all those people, that 18,000 or however many were at Rupp Arena, those people all changed their opinions by Sunday without hearing him talk. Tennessee fans waited for Josh Heupel to coach before they changed their opinion on him. And that I'm fine with. Look, I think Rand Carthon's bad. Guy goes out there and they win the Super Bowl, I'll change my tune. But like this, they didn't even wait for the guy to have a press conference. Unbelievable. 615-737-1025. The question of the day we've got on this program is, what about Brock Bowers? Because Mark Dominic, SiriusXM NFL Radio, says he'd take him at 7. If he's there, it's a slam dunk. Stockton to Malone, he says. So I asked Mark Dominic, you would really take Brock Bowers over Joe Alt? What he said next. Hey, men, let's talk about the Tennessee Men's Clinic. You put this off for way too long. It's time to get it done and move forward with your sex life, and the Tennessee Men's Clinic is the leader in bedroom confidence. Why? Because the reality is pills often quit working and guys start making excuses for not going to bed. Did you know that studies show that men will be more irritable and argumentative before bed just to avoid failing at intimacy? And yes, I know many of you hate going to the doctor, but the Tennessee Men's Clinic was created in 2014 to take care of guys just like you. For a decade, the urologists and providers at the Tennessee Men's Clinic have helped guys with ED and weight loss, and they now even offer aesthetic enhancements and cosmetic procedures. Their ED and weight loss treatments truly change lives with no surgery, and they are seeing success rates as high as 90%. They specialize in seeing guys who think they're out of luck, regain hope that they can be successful in the bedroom, and beyond. They even offer same or next day appointments. So, hit your goals this year. Stop thinking about it and call the Tennessee Men's Clinic today. 615-208-9090. That's 615-208-9090. Or go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com to book an appointment today. That's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So today, the number one topic has been Mark Dominic, the former Tampa Bay Buccaneers general manager, on Sirius XM NFL radio. And you guys can bitch about Dominic all you want. I have a boatload of respect for him. And he said if he were the Titans at 7, he would take Brock Bowers, period. Here's what he said.
If Brock is there, I think that's too easy of a pick. If not, it feels like it's an offensive tackle. Could they take another pass rusher type of guy? Sure. But my gut instinct is that they want to make sure they secure the offensive line. They did what you said, right? You get a pass-catching running back on Tony Pollard. You got Tyjae Spears, who obviously can catch the ball well at the backfield. Those two will hopefully complement each other and work really well. But then they also said, hey, look, we're going to solidify our wide receiver room with Treylon Burks, but Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. We've got 3 guys, 3 horses, so we don't have to take a wide receiver, in the first round. We feel really good. So it goes back down to me. It's the 3 choices. It's if the tight end's there, I think it's a Stockton to Malone. I think it's a slam dunk. But if the tight end's not there, I think it's offensive tackle. And then if it's not, if for whatever reason they like only one of them and that player's off the board, I think that they might be the first team to take the defensive, take Dallas Turner.
Okay. He says he's taking Brock Bowers. And I heard that and I had to text him. Because I love Mark, but I'm like, wait a minute, over Joe Alt? I understand the idea of if Joe Alt's not there, then go ahead and take Brock Bowers. But he's like, if the tight end is there, Stockton to Malone, slam-a-lam-a-ding-dong, there is no question, it is boom. Like, wait a minute, hold on. Over Joe Alt. So I texted him. I said, so you would take Bowers over Joe Alt? Dominic texted back. And he said he's not a big fan of Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
But he says, I think I'd take Bowers. Then I'd take the 2nd round pick and the 4th round pick to move up and get a tackle because it's a good class. So what is Mark Dominic saying? He is saying he would take Brock Bowers at 7. Then he would take 38 and the 4th, which I think is 106, and he'd move up to wherever he can get, and he'd draft one of the tackles that we're told this is a deep tackle draft. So Patrick Paul out of Houston, Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU, maybe you get back in the 1st round or one of those guys falls, Jordan Morgan, Tyler Guyton, one of these guys is available. You draft the tackle, and Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT,
starts at left tackle or starts at right tackle. That's what Mark Dominic says he would do. Well, let me say this. That's bold. That's bold. And before he said it, I would not have considered it. But if Bowers is as good as Mark Dominic is convinced he is, that does make me go back and say, elite touchdown scorer, matchup nightmare. You don't have a slot receiver. He could play the slot. Dane Brugler said on Robbie and Joe he could play the X. He is absolutely a top 10 player in this class. And you need more good players. You need more good players, as Rand Carthon said at the Combine, that can put the ball in the paint. If Bowers is one of these generational level tight ends, see, I look at it differently than you guys do. Because a lot of people say, well, tight ends in the 1st round, TJ Hawkinson's a good tight end, but what the hell's he done in the NFL? But I look at tight end differently. I look at the standard tight end, and then I look at Shannon Sharp, Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce, George Kittle. Those guys are different. They're more wide receiver quality players than they are tight end quality players. If Bowers is more of that, Kittle, Kelce, Shannon, Gronk, if he's in that category, now it's a different discussion we're having. Because that means that he could be one of the best players in the league. And the thing about those guys is that because of, in Gronk's case, his size and athleticism, in Kelsey's case, I think it's kind of his ability to get open. In Shannon's case, it's the fact that Shannon's basically a wide receiver who's playing tight end. And in Bauer's case, it's supposedly what he can do running with the ball. In each guy's case, they're too big for a DB to cover. And they're too fast for a linebacker to cover. And in each case, those guys are as productive for their teams as a high-end wide receiver is. And we talk about Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors and, the guys on all these other teams that they got a wide receiver and Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown. And that if Bowers is that kind of player, at least there's an argument. And the one thing I'll say, if I'm in the draft room, if I own the team and the GM and the coach are saying, we love this guy, we got to have this guy, this is the guy we want, they're coming up to me and they're saying that, I would then need you to answer the question. What are you going to do at tackle, at left tackle and at right tackle? And Mark Dominic says, I'm going to go with Nicholas Petit-Frere at one of the tackle spots, and I'm going to use 38 in the fourth rounder to go get the other tackle. Again, it's not something that I would have thought of. It's not something that I necessarily would do. I'm pretty stick and pick, and I'd probably take Alt. But it's at least a compelling argument, and it's a bold strategy. And I know that people, I heard Derek say, well, if you do this, somebody's going to get fired. No, if you do this and it doesn't work, somebody's going to get fired. But if you draft Joe Alt and it doesn't work, somebody's going to get fired. And that's just reality. And so it's a compelling argument. And it's one that, again, because I think the world of Mark Dominic as an evaluator, it does, as I would say, it reopens the case. But I'm not a huge Nicholas Petit-Frere fan. But the one thing I'll say about you Titan fans, you guys can't be, well, Brian Callahan says Nicholas Petit-Frere's good. Bill Callahan's going to coach him up. And then this comes down and you're like, oh, no, I don't want PT. Can't do that. I'm not a PT fan. But you guys are. So just keep that in mind when you make your arguments. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on that. And I can just hear some of you as far as the fallout if this were to happen, and I can hear it. Jared, you would kill Rand Carthon if he drafted Brock Bowers, a tight end at 7 overall. Would I? We'll discuss next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
There's good tight ends, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I like Sanders. He was a little underwhelming in terms of how he worked out, but I like the player on tape and what he can do catching the ball. I'm not worried about the blocking part. But Bowers is like kind of an elite by himself. Hard to walk away from that guy. So, again, as we've talked about off the air and the way I feel on the air, at these mock drafts that are showing Bowers at 15 and 16, I just have a hard time believing that's even remotely possible based off of the tape that I've seen and some of the conversations I've had.
That was Mark Dominic on Sirius XM NFL Radio. Again, Dominic says he'd take Bowers over Joe Alt, which is a hot take. But at least he's got a strategy. So I got a couple of texts in here. Jared, if Rand Carthon took Brock Bowers, he should be fired. Another person, Jared, you would kill Rand Carthon on the radio if he drafted a tight end 7th overall. Let me just say this. And again, nobody gets in trouble for something that they haven't done yet. And I sometimes think a lot of you guys try to fast forward on my feelings. Like, oh, Jared, you're just saying this so that when they do this, you can say that. I'm like, I don't do that. I feel, I talk. That's it. I don't think ahead of time of how I'm going to feel. But I will for this just because you guys are going to say this. I would respect it if Rand takes ownership of the pick. So if they pick Brock Bowers at 7, I don't want to hear any roll the dice, play the board. I don't want to hear any, talk. I mean, I went back and I looked at it last year when Rand Carthon, when they took Will Levis and Tajay Spears, and it was all just generalities and everything else. And he was asked about Levis, and, he talked about how they think Will's got a good future. And finally, Vrabel goes, and I think Gentry Estes asked the question. He goes, Gentry, I think we can be transparent here and say that Kentucky was not as good in 2022 as they were in 2021. And to me, that's the ownership of, I'm believing in the kid because of this reason. And Rand doesn't do that very often. In fact, I'm not sure Rand ever does it. Rand does not take ownership of decisions that are unpopular. He loves getting up there and talking about, I walked out of the shower and had a towel around my waist when I told Chad Brinker we should sign Calvin Ridley. But where was he when they traded Kevin Byard? The Titans had no interest in bringing Derrick Henry back. But he didn't say that. No, he said, oh, yeah, well, I talked to Derrick. He knows where we are. We know where he's at. So if you're going to do something controversial, at least get up there and own it. Because they didn't do that last year. They picked Peter, and it was like, yeah, we don't know where he's going to play. They knew good well he was going to be a guard. So they lied about it then. They lied about it during the season. They lied about it after the season. If you're going to do something, own it. Now, the thing is I think the other guy will. Because that guy, he's not a bull crapper. That guy, Callahan, he'll tell you what he thinks. But no, I'm not going to crush Rand if they take Brock Bowers, if he owns it. Other than that, I mean, don't give me this happy horse crap talk. Be real with me about the football team. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, is Bowers a better prospect than Pitts was because they said similar things about Pitts that they do with Bowers, and he hasn't done anything. Well, I want to remind you guys this all the time. They're not similar players. Pitts was about athletic ability and projectability and everything else, and Bowers is, look at this guy in college. He is too big for the big guy, or for the fast guys, and he is too fast for the big guys. That has been Bowers' calling card. And the production with Bowers in college, off the charts. Now, I think Pitts had a good junior year, kind of came out of nowhere and shot up the draft boards. I'm not going to use Kyle Pitts as a reason to not take Brock Bowers. Aaron says, we signed a left tackle a couple of days ago, Jared. No, you did not, Aaron. You traded for one, and he's a backup. He's played in 7 career games with no starts. That is not a starting left tackle. Skyler says, no. If Bowers is taken at 7 by the Titans and Joe Alt is on the board, somebody should be fired. You want to know what I think will happen? If that happens, let's say Joe Alt's on the board. Let's say it goes Williams, Daniels, May, Harrison, Neighbors, Adunze, Bowers. Let's say that happens. McCarthy, well, whatever. Alton, Bowers are there. Bowers is the pick. You guys will start off like that, just like the Kentucky fans. You guys will start off with, how could they, my God? And then by 2 o'clock the next day, you guys will say, we got the best pass catcher that we got. Oh, my God, what a great pick by Rand Carthon. That's what you guys will do, because that's what you guys do now. You guys tell me they hit on every pick in last year's draft. I'm like, what? We don't even know if the quarterback's going to make it. I'll give you one hit for right now. Skoronski, bad first year. Jury's out. Levis, jury's out. Wiley, he didn't do anything last year. Guy can never stay healthy. Duncan sucks. I mean, I'll give you one hit, Spears. That he is good now, and he's going to be good for his rookie contract. That'll be a hit. But other than that, Let's go to Kyle, who's up next and has been waiting patiently on the program. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Kyle.
What's going on, Jared? 10 more days and we'll be there. No more draft scenarios. But
you guys talk about that like that's a good thing. I tell you, I'm sad. I love this crap. I don't know about you guys. I freaking love it.
I love it, but I've had enough. I'm ready to have some new teammates or new players. Okay. Joe Alt, if he's there, you got to take him. All these guys like Jacksonville's re-signing Josh Allen, Colts loading up with DeForest Buckner for the future. We got to shore up our O-line. And they got over there in Houston, what's his name, from Alabama, number 3 overall. Anywho, so we got to shore up this line. I don't even like tackle anymore. Since I saw Burke's face, I'm sorry, TD. No, that guy's out of shape. I don't think we can depend on him right now. So that's the only thing I could see us getting.
So if you can't depend on Burks, why would Bowers be a bad choice?
That's the only thing I can see. Open up the middle of the field where we were depending on him, but I think Burks is probably gone anyways.
So here's the thing. I think, Kyle, thank you. I mean, I'll tackle too, right? The one thing that we have to remember about this is that it's easy to look at these players and just see the positions, right? Okay, Neighbors is a receiver. Alt is a tackle. Bowers is a tight end. Dallas Turner is a pass rusher. But what we're not looking at is the difference in how good some of these guys might be. You know, I haven't studied Dallas Turner, but Dallas Turner was a productive 18-year-old in the SEC. So I feel pretty strongly about his ability to play in the NFL. If Dallas Turner is Lawrence Taylor and Joe Alt is, what did Dane Brugler say? Jake Matthews in Nate Solder's body. Now, look, Solder, when he was in New England, was very, very good. And Matthews has been a solid left tackle for like 8 years in Atlanta. But if Dallas Turner is Javon Curse, you know, you're still better off with Javon Curse than you are with the solid tackle. And that's the point I'm making when it comes to Bowers, which is clearly Mark Dominic sees Bowers and he sees Kittle, Kelsey, Gronk, Shannon. That kind of production. Like, that's what he sees. Now, again, those guys are all different, right? Shannon was 230 pounds. Gronk was 265. But it's just how deadly those guys are compared to everybody else. And we'll see if Sam Laporta works his way into that mix. But it's not as simple as just take the tackle. Because when you draft for need, what ends up happening is you end up taking a worse player, and then you have to play against the really good player that you didn't take. And I'm not saying Bowers is better than Alt. I'm not the big board guy. That stuff I don't know. Robert in Spring Hill says, I really hope that it's Joe Alt, but if it's not, it's Brock Bowers. I won't be mad. Brock Bowers is a game-changing tight end. I think he's going to be great as well. The good news is it looks like the Titans will have an opportunity to get really good players, and if Traylon Burks continues to be out of shape, maybe he can gain a few more pounds and play right tackle. Maybe something to that. So one texter texted in and said when I talked about, you know, trying to get top 60 picks, And the texter said you could trade with the Commanders. That could be a team because all these teams that are behind you, all these teams that are behind you, Atlanta has 43, but the Chicago has one top 60 pick, that's 9. The Jets have one top 60 pick, that's 10. Minnesota has 11 and 23, and Denver doesn't have a second-round pick either. And so a texter said, well, you could trade with the Commanders. And I said, trade with the Commanders. And I texted back, I said, so I'm not picking until 36. And the texter said, my idea is to accumulate top 100 picks. Titans end up with 36, 38, 40, 67, 78, and 100, plus 106, 138, 146, 152, and 182. So I'm just not taking an elite player when I sucked so bad last year and fired my coach so I could draft an elite player, and I'm just not going to do that to go get more second-round picks? No. I want one of the elite 8 in this class. Again, to me, 8 elite players. Williams, May, Daniels, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, Dallas Turner, Brock Bowers. I want one of the elite 8. That's it. I'm picking 7th in a draft with 8 great players, and I want one of the 8. That's my prize for sucking so bad last year. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. The Predators finale is coming up. And we do have a pair of playoff tickets to give away, but I am debating how to give these away. So we'll talk about that next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. All right, so here's the deal. We got a pair of playoff tickets to give away for the Predators for their opener, whenever that may be, round 1, game 1 at Bridgestone Arena. We got a pair of tickets to give away. Now, I could do, and I'm not going to do this, so don't just call right in, whatever. I could do caller 5 right now I could do that, but I'm not going to do that. I could do the code word thing that we've done that I actually kind of like. We could do that. But what I'd really like to do is I'd like to have somebody, write in an email a story about why they think they should go to game 1 of the playoffs at Bridgestone Arena, the kind of the pull at your heartstrings type stuff. The problem is I don't know if we're allowed to do that or not. And Chase is on vacation, and he would be the one that would decide those kind of things. So what I'm thinking is we're not going to give the tickets away today. We'll give them away tomorrow. And we'll either code word it the way that we've done tickets the last however long we've done it, or I'll get the green light as far as whether or not we're allowed to do kind of like an email contest submission where you give us the best reasons why you think you should go to the playoffs, and we'll read through them, and then we'll read it on the air of the winner, and that person will get tickets. That is the route I think I want to go with this. And so I would say I'm making an executive decision here, but really I'm making an executive non-decision on these playoff tickets because, it is what it is. What'd you say, Ian? All right. So with that, the Predators have the season finale tonight against Pittsburgh. Hal Gill joins us on the program from the booth, presented by Duncan. So, Hal, I want to start with this. I think it's complete and total bullcrap that the Predators, I think Elliot Friedman said today that he's hearing that Vancouver will not start their series until probably Tuesday. It looks like you're going to play Vancouver. And so I think it is complete and total bullcrap that the Predators would play today and then not play for 8 days while Vancouver plays on Thursday and then would only have a kind of a mild break there in between. You got to help me out on this. How is this any way fair competitively?
Well, I think if you look at it, I think both teams would probably say that there's benefits to having rest. There's also, if you get rusty if you're off that long. And so I think it depends on what situation your team is in. And I think you look at it, but this should have been talked about a long time ago when they made the schedule and had the Preds finishing, 3 or 4 days before everyone else.
If you were a player,
but it is what as a player, you know what I said? It is what it is, and this is what we're dealing with, and keep moving.
Would you, though, be, again, you're not on this team, so you're not speaking for the team, but just would it be hard mentally or physically for you to go 8 days between playing competitive hockey games?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's mentally. I think you have to stay sharp. You have to stay on top of your game, and you take 8 days off. And, yeah, you can rest up. And, if you're banged up, you're like, yes, give me those 8 days. I'll gladly take those. And there's a lot of guys that are banged up, so they're going to look at it that way. But there's also, hey, I'm playing at my prime right now. I'm feeling as good as I have, and I want to keep playing, and we want to keep going, and we want to stay sharp. The real challenge comes for Bruno. He's got to come up with a practice plan. The coaches need to formulate practices that are going to mimic game speed. At the same time, they don't want to hurt people and wear them down with a full week of practice. And mentally, that can be exhausting just showing up at the rink. But I think the coaching staff has been good all year about giving days off, and then when they do practice, they go hard. And so I think that's going to be the tough one is how hard do you make these guys work? Because remember, hardest practice you'll have might be a little bit over an hour, and when you're looking at a game, that's going to last 3 hours. And so don't forget you have to include the warm up and the pregame skate, everything that goes into a game day is 3 to 4 hours of activity, whereas practice is an hour and you're done. And so I think there's got to be some level of preparation that the coaches will sink into coming up tomorrow.
So I felt like Hal Gill with us. I felt like Saturday's game was kind of a homecoming type game, right? Like it was a big celebratory fan appreciation night, and you played a team that was just ready to go to Cancun. I mean, that team sucks. It's like when Georgia schedules Vandy on homecoming. And so I don't really take much out of the game on Saturday. But Pittsburgh tonight, I mean, they got real bones left out there. You know, I mean, they are 1 point out of a playoff spot with 3 teams ahead of them. I mean, they absolutely have to win the next 2, I would assume, if they think they're going to make the playoffs. So you're going to get Sidney Crosby and the Penguins tonight at 100% max effort. So how beneficial do you think that is as opposed to the way that, you know, playing Columbus and Chicago?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a good, you know, I hate to say it, but it's kind of a good thing that the Preds have a team that has that, because you're right, that Columbus game was sloppy. There's not a lot of care in that game, and I think the Preds are a better team, and they showed it, but it was sloppy defensively, and it just, you know, their hearts weren't into it. I think Pittsburgh, they got the Preds and then the Islanders. They're going to be banging on, going hard, because their back is against the wall in a 4-team race for that final spot in the East. And so they're going to go hard. I think the Preds, if I'm in that locker room, I'm thinking, okay, I want to match this. I got, you know, 6-7 days off, you know, depending on who you play. You're going to have some time to rest. Why wouldn't we go out here and blow it out, try to get to a 100-point season and feel some pride in going for it and playing that hard game? I think the hard game playoff game, and then, you know, down the road you're ready. You're playing. You have that mentality that you want to win, and you're going to need that going into game 1 of the playoffs for sure.
So what do you make of the Vancouver Canucks? Because, I mean, I can't even remember the last time the Predators played them. I mean, I know they have Elias Pettersson and Brock Besser, and I know Rick Tockett's a great coach. I mean, it's like 99% likely you're going to start off in Vancouver. What do we make of that potential matchup? What do we know about them? And what do we think about, you know, maybe what the Predators need to focus on tonight to make sure that they're ready for Vancouver when they face them next week?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I think you look at, you know, you're talking, if you're comparing them to Dallas, Dallas has some big defensemen that are going to be in a deep team. I think there's some high-end talent in Vancouver, and then you know, there's some good defense. You're looking at Quinn Hughes, that's a game changer. A goalie in Demko that's coming around, but they were so hot in the beginning of the season, and they've tailed off a little bit. So, I think the Preds, the way they play and the way they suffocate teams, I think that's what they more have to focus on, their game, rather than, you know, playing against tailoring against one team or another. I think they just got to stick with their game. Everyone I've been talking to that goes around and plays the Preds is coming back saying there's just no space to move. And I feel like in a Dallas game, it's going to be, hey, you got to fight for the interior. You got to fight for those battles to get goals. And I think if you look at a Vancouver game, it's going to be, we got to play fast, we got to play hard, we got to suffocate them, take away their offense, and have those quick counters and take advantage of those mistakes. I think it's going to be easier to get to the middle, but it's going to be a faster game. So I think, you know, either way, the Preds are right now, from over the last half of the season, are built for that. They have 4 lines. They have big defensemen if they need them, and Luke Shen, and he can box out and protect the middle. Those guys are there. You have the goaltending. I think the Preds are built for the playoffs right now. And if you can roll 4 lines against a team like Vancouver, and if you can get those guys to get to the interior against a team like Dallas, I think you're going to see success. But that all hinges on the fact that the Preds need to play their system. Their system is really hard to play against. They need to dominate that system, and I think that starts tonight with going out and executing and be ready to have that system in place, because you can't have any gaps. If they have gaps in their system, they have one guy that's not a little bit disjointed, then it's going to cost them.
You know, Hal, I was thinking about this. I look at the last 10 games. The Predators are 5-4-1. And obviously, you know, they've come back to earth after the heater. But I remember in 2019, you know, after the President's Trophy year in 2018, it was like, well, all that matters is that we flip the switch come playoff time. And I think the Predators finished like 8-2-1 in their last 10. And they end up with 100 points, and they win the Central Division. And they did not come out very well in that Dallas series to begin the series, and they fell flat in the middle of it. And it told me that the last 10 games didn't matter. Should I look at the last 10 games, the 5-4-1, knowing the 2 came against Chicago and whatever you want to call that Columbus team on Saturday, and be nervous about it? Or with 8 days off and a playoff series and it's you versus Vancouver, like, do we just let all that stuff go and move on?
Yeah, you know what? I guess shame on me because I kind of underestimated the team and the chip on their shoulder. I think at the beginning of the season, there's a lot of people, including myself, that said, hey, they're going to compete for a playoff spot, but it's going to go either way. They might sneak in and grab one, or they might, give it a fun year. I think it's going to be a fun year no matter what. And I think I'm looking at guys like McDonough, guys like Shen, Yossi, Forsberg, certainly O'Reilly. I think they were like, stop it. Like, we're a team. We're here to win, and we're going to compete. And they got the buy-in from all their teammates, and they're showing, there's games against the Jets when Ryan O'Reilly was diving. Like, that wasn't a make-or-break game, but he's diving to block a shot head first. There's a commitment level that these guys are bringing. And so I think going into the playoffs, I don't think they're going to be relaxed. I don't think they don't have the high expectations and the nerves. I think they got something to prove, and they want to go out and show that, hey, for 82 games, we've been working on being this team, and now we're getting to the spot where we have that team. Now let's go prove it. And I think a lot of teams are going to be nervous to play against the Preds. I certainly wouldn't want to come in and play a team that went on a heater like they did, where they played so well and committed to it every night, because in the playoffs, you're looking for gaps. You're looking for, what's their weakness. And when the Preds play like that, they don't have much of a weakness. So I think it's going to be fun to watch this team, and I think they really have something to prove. Like, I think the leadership is kind of, like Colton Sissons is looking around going, hey, no one expected us to be there. I was on that team when we expected to win and we were going to go and roll, like you said. And now he's on a team that people counted out, and I think he's probably got something to prove, like the rest of them.
Hal Gill will be in the booth. He's in it now. He'll be in it tonight at Pittsburgh. 6 o'clock is the puck drop. Hal, great stuff. Always presented by Duncan. We appreciate it. We will talk very soon.
Sounds good. Enjoy the game tonight. Last one before for the dance. It's going to be fun.
Last one before the real season starts, which, of course, is the playoffs. Let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, bet the NBA play-in tournament with a no-sweat same-game parlay from FanDuel, my official sportsbook app. It does not matter if you're new to FanDuel or if you already have an account. You'll get bonus bets back if your same-game parlay, your SGP, does not win on any Tuesday night matchup. The NBA same-game parlays are the perfect way to combine your bets for a chance to score a bigger payday. So there's a lot of games tomorrow. There's LeBron and all that coming up in the play-in tournament. So get excited about all those. However you want to play, go to FanDuel.com/JGM to bet the NBA with a no-sweat same-game parlay. That's FanDuel.com/JGM, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issues and all withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions do apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ. TJ's my realtor, and I'll tell you, I love him. You will too. All right, one final regular season Predators Game Day tonight at PPG Paints Arena. The Predators and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pregame is at 5. Puck drop is at 6. Pittsburgh 37, 31, and 12, 86 points. They are fighting for a playoff spot. The last playoff spot in the Eastern Conference right now belongs to the Washington Capitals, who have 87 points. Washington has 87. Detroit has 87. Philadelphia has 87. And Pittsburgh has 86. So Pittsburgh needs 4 points, and then they need to do some praying. And they will have a shot at getting into the playoffs. You are set. You know, if you get one more point, or if Vegas, I think, doesn't get one more point,
Correct,
the rest of the way, you end up as the first wild card, and you'll be playing Vancouver. You're probably going to play Vancouver anyways, so just make of that what you will. The Predators at 47, 29, and 55, good for 99 points. It'd be nice to get 100 points on the season. Nice to get a 101 in there. Boy, talk about a job Andrew Burnett's done this year. But we start with his take of what it means for the Predators after two, what I thought were really, minor league games against Chicago and Columbus, to play a team like Pittsburgh fighting for a playoff spot.
I think it really helps. I think having an opportunity to play, again, we're not playing for 5, 6, 7 days. To have an opportunity to play a playoff game without having to go through one is going to be really important for us. Just that level. I think, obviously, Chicago, Columbus are in different modes in their franchises, and tonight's it's going to be a playoff game. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I can't believe that he even said that. Most of these coaches don't say things like, Chicago and Columbus kind of suck. But they do. And I was at the game Saturday, and the Predators, like Hal, I think, described it best, where he was like, it just felt like, nobody really cared out there. It did feel that way. I look at tonight as kind of a ramp up. Tonight is the dress rehearsal, and then you get a week off, and then it's for real. And this is a playoff caliber team. So I don't know, Ian, do we know if anybody's sitting tonight?
I don't know that for sure. From what I thought I heard, I think most of the lineup should be the starting lineup.
Good. I want everybody to play tonight. I want Saros to play. I want the big boys to play. I can't play hockey scared. I want them to play. Let's see how they ramp up getting ready for the playoffs. Max has the pregame. He'll tell you who's in, who's out. Max has the pregame from Pittsburgh. That's next. Stillman and Company. See you tomorrow at 2.